12 years. That's what I gave Alderbridge Systems. I gave them my weekends, my holidays, and my 10th wedding anniversary, which I spent in a dark conference room eating vending machine almonds while rebuilding the entire logistics flow from scratch. I read the termination letter while he kept talking. Standard language, severance, exit support, HR, follow-up. I already knew every word. I helped write the policy 5 years ago. You understand, he added, like that would soften the knife. I nodded once. Of course. I walked out quietly, didn't slam the door, didn't argue, didn't ask why. Then I went home, opened my laptop, and checked the time lock. 2 months earlier, the ransomware hit on a Thursday. By Monday, our inventory systems were corrupted, supplier payments were stalled, and 4 major clients were threatening lawsuits. Brandon, our CEO, called it a manageable disruption. We were bleeding 6 figures a day. That night, I canceled our dinner reservation. It was our 10-year anniversary. My wife didn't say anything, just set the wrapped box on the table and went upstairs. I slept under my desk at HQ that night, first of many. They didn't ask me to fix everything. They just assumed I would. I was the crisis ops director, the guy they only noticed when things broke. I wasn't flashy, didn't dress like an executive. I didn't play golf with the VPs or post company selfies on LinkedIn. But when systems went dark, when suppliers ghosted, when trucks stalled mid-route with spoiled product, I was the one they texted. No one else knew how the machine fit together, because I'd built it. For the next 8 weeks, I worked 80 to 90 hours a week. No weekends, no holidays, no excuses. I missed my niece's recital, missed Thanksgiving, missed the night my wife's father had a stroke. I kept telling myself I'd make it up to her. Just get through this quarter. Just get Alderbridge standing again. She stopped texting back after the second week. I built a stopgap tool, Argus, to reroute disrupted supply paths and triage client demand in real time. It saved the entire fulfillment chain. Nobody knew it existed. Not IT, not product, just me. Melissa, our shiny new product manager, mentioned her triage framework in a board call, even used screenshots from Argus. She didn't build it, never even saw the code. I didn't say anything. Brandon gave a speech on resilience 3 weeks later. Talked about teamwork, adaptive culture, rising to the moment. He named 6 people. I wasn't one of them. I wasn't surprised. I wasn't even angry, just tired. 2 days after we stabilized, I got the calendar invite. Check in with Brandon and Tanya. Friday, 10 a.m. No subject line, no agenda. I clicked accept, didn't ask questions, didn't follow up. I already knew. Friday at 10 a.m. I wore a clean shirt, not ironed but clean. I hadn't shaved in 3 days. No one commented. I arrived at conference room C 5 minutes early and sat at the far end of the glass table, the one with the cracked power outlet nobody ever fixed. Brandon Kell walked in with a coffee he didn't offer to share and a face trained for shareholder meetings. Tanya Reese followed, younger than me by a decade, hired 6 months ago as strategic ops lead. Her resume had buzzwords in bold and a blog with her name in the domain. HR rep was last. Melissa Choi, polite, pleasant, efficient, like a printer that never jams. Nathan, Brandon said, sitting across from me. Thanks for making time. As if I'd had something better to do. I nodded once. We'll keep this short, Tanya said. She always smiled when delivering news. It wasn't kindness. It was posture. We've appreciated everything you've done through the transition this quarter, Brandon continued, and the board was particularly impressed with the speed at which operations stabilized under pressure. I waited. But moving forward, Tanya picked up. We're reimagining how operations integrates with predictive modeling, and part of that shift involves realigning our leadership structure to support more agile workflows. I said nothing, just looked at her hands, manicured, still moving her ring around her index finger like she was nervous, or guilty, or both. We're eliminating the crisis ops director role, Brandon said bluntly. It's no longer aligned with our future direction. We've decided not to continue your employment. There it was. I glanced at the folder Melissa slid across the table. White. Labeled Transition Documents. I opened it. 2 months severance. Standard NDA. Return of equipment. Optional exit coaching through a third-party firm I'd never heard of. Brandon leaned forward slightly. We hope you understand, Nathan. This isn't personal. I closed the folder and looked him directly in the eye. Of course, I said quietly. I understand completely. The silence after that was longer than it needed to be. Tanya shifted in her seat. Brandon coughed. Melissa offered a practiced nod, like she'd just watched a pet being put down gently. We'd appreciate your help with the transition, Tanya added. A short overlap with the new integration team. Couple weeks, maybe. I'll think about it, I said. No commitment. No tone. We stood. I didn't offer a handshake. Neither did they. I left the room without another word. I cleared out my office in 40 minutes. One backpack, no photos, no coffee mug, just a beat-up laptop, a moleskin notebook, and a phone charger with a frayed cable I never replaced. Jake from Fleet Services passed me by the elevators. His eyes flicked to the backpack, then to my face. "They did it," he said. Not a question. I nodded. "Bastards," he muttered. "You good?" "Always." He didn't press. He just reached into his coat, handed me a folded piece of paper, and walked away without looking back. I opened it once I was outside. They're about to learn the difference between running lean and bleeding out. I folded it once, slipped it into my back pocket, and walked to my car. When I got home, my wife was standing at the sink, rinsing a wine glass from the night before. She turned slowly when she heard the door. Her eyes flicked down to the backpack. "So," she said. One word. Not angry, not surprised. I nodded. "They let me go." She didn't speak for a few seconds, just turned off the water and dried her hands with surgical precision. "They waited until it was safe." "They did." She looked at me the way people look at collapsed bridges. Not with rage, with disappointment. "And you saw it coming." I said nothing. I'd said enough. I walked past her, down the hall and into my home office, closed the door. The room was quiet. Bookshelves, 2 monitors, a fireproof cabinet in the corner that looked like a file drawer to anyone else. I sat down at the desk and powered up my personal laptop, entered a 14-digit password, then another, then answered a security prompt that asked, "What were you building?" I typed, "Argus." The interface loaded. It wasn't flashy, just lines of control toggles, contract directories, and one blinking icon labeled, "If they screw me." I clicked it. It opened a locked directory with a time-stamped log. Last updated 9 months ago. Inside were 5 folders, client priority contracts, including SLAs, renewal patterns, and vulnerability assessments. Vendor failover matrix, detailing which suppliers were rigged to default if compliance was breached. Argus root access keys, the unregistered admin layer tied to a private license. Executive comms log, scrubbed copies of Slack exports showing timelines of decisions versus public statements. Contingency contacts, a curated list of clients with one-sentence notes, loyal to results, not brands. I took a breath, then opened the file marked Trigger Manual. A screen appeared with a 5-second delay prompt. "Are you sure you want to proceed?" I didn't click it. Not yet. Instead, I opened the contingency contacts list and scrolled to the name at the top, Watkins and Drew. $4.2 million per year logistics client. High maintenance. Demanded results. My note next to their name only cares about who delivers. I drafted an email in my private Proton account. Nothing elaborate. Subject, just a courtesy note. "Hi, Laura. Just wanted to let you know I'll no longer be with Alderbridge moving forward. It's been a pleasure supporting you and the Watkins and Drew account. If you ever want to talk through back-end ops continuity, or just understand what really kept things moving the last 2 quarters, feel free to reach out. No pitch, just context. Nathan R." I stared at it for a moment, then hit send. I closed the lid of the laptop and leaned back in the chair. Through the thin walls of the house, I could hear my wife unloading the dishwasher with the precise clink of someone redirecting disappointment into order. I didn't blame her. I hadn't fought. I hadn't screamed. I hadn't threatened lawsuits or demanded recognition. I had said one word, understood, because I did. And now they would. The first reply came at 7:42 a.m. the next morning. Subject, just a courtesy note. From Laura Daniels, Watkins and Drew. Nathan, just seeing this. Wait, what? You're not with Alderbridge anymore? Can we talk today? Please, call me. Underneath it was her number. Cell, not office. I didn't rush to reply. I made coffee, checked the weather, and walked around the block. At 8:17, I called. She picked up on the second ring. "Tell me this is some kind of misunderstanding." "Nope," I said calmly. "They terminated me on Friday." "But why? After what you just pulled off?" "They said they were going in a new direction." Silence. I let it sit. Then she said, "Who's managing our flow now?" "Not sure. Someone in strategic ops, I think." "That system you implemented? The fulfillment batching? Argus?" "Proprietary," I said. "Unlicensed." She caught the implication immediately. "That's going to hurt." I didn't answer. "You working with anyone yet?" "Considering options." Laura paused again. When she spoke, her tone was colder, sharper. "Do not sign anything without talking to me first." I smiled and ended the call. By noon, I had 4 more messages from clients, each referred by someone else. Quiet panic had started moving through the Alderbridge client base, the kind of whisper chain executives couldn't detect until it turned into missed renewals and delayed invoices. At 3:42 p.m., an email arrived from Alderbridge Legal. Subject, Non-solicitation violation inquiry. Nathan, we've received reports that you've contacted Alderbridge clients regarding potential service transitions. As you are aware, your termination agreement includes a 6-month non-solicitation clause. I stopped reading, opened a copy of my signed termination package, scrolled to page 9, clause 14b. Non-solicitation clause is void if employee is terminated without cause and without severance in lieu of notice. I highlighted it, copied the paragraph, and replied, "Hi Jenna, please see clause 14.b in the attached signed agreement. Termination was without cause, with only severance, no notice period. Per the agreement, non-solicitation is unenforceable. All the best, Nathan R." I received no reply. 2 days later, the Argus dashboard pinged a warning: primary license authorization failure. They'd attempted to reroute the core logistics automation script through a cloned access node without the root authentication. The result? The system collapsed on itself. Fulfillment queues stalled, reprioritization logic failed. Orders began cycling endlessly through fallback states, triggering backup failsafes that hadn't been updated since last year. At 9:22 p.m., I got a text from Jake. "They're fi." That was all. Then a follow-up. "CEO's in the building, emergency meeting. Ops is in freefall." I didn't reply. I opened my laptop, typed in the command, /Argus:/lock manual dash time delay 0 confirm. Yes. The interface returned a single line. Core modules disabled. License lock engaged. Manual override required. I closed the terminal and sipped my coffee. 3 hours later, Brandon texted me directly. "Nathan, we're experiencing some unexpected system issues. Can we talk?" I didn't answer. A second message followed. "Please, we just need clarification on a few things. Your consulting fee, whatever you want." Still no reply. That night, I signed a consulting agreement with Vanguard Systems, Alderbridge's quietest but fastest growing competitor. I'd spoken with their director of operations 3 months earlier at a conference in Chicago. He'd said, "If you ever get tired of doing the impossible for people who don't notice, come see us." Apparently, they'd noticed I was free now. The agreement included full control over back-end system design, build-it-your-way policy, $410,000 annual salary, 3% equity in any IP I developed while on contract, no PR, no office politics. In short, peace. Vanguard didn't want me to clean up someone else's mess. They wanted me to build something no one else could break. At 8 a.m. the next morning, Alderbridge's CEO called again. I let it ring. Then Melissa from HR emailed. Subject: request for temporary consulting engagement. "Hi Nathan, we're reaching out with urgency. Alderbridge's system infrastructure is experiencing ongoing disruptions. We'd like to formally request a temporary consulting arrangement at your earliest convenience. Compensation to be determined at your discretion. Sincerely, Melissa Choi, Director, Human Resources." I stared at the screen for a long moment, then opened a new draft. "Hi Melissa, thank you for reaching out. Unfortunately, I've accepted a position elsewhere and am unable to assist. Wishing you all the best. Regards, Nathan R." I hit send, then archived the entire Alderbridge folder from my inbox. No rage, no vengeance, just business. The first media mention came 3 days after I activated the lock. Alderbridge Logistics faces major fulfillment disruptions following internal system realignment. No one from the company commented. But I could see the fingerprints. The wording was classic PR damage control. Realignment was their favorite word for internal hemorrhaging. Jake messaged me that evening. "Orders are 72 hours behind schedule. Clients are bailing. Someone just rage quit in Fleet." Another message followed seconds later. "Tanya's been in meetings nonstop. Her Slack status just says, 'Please do not disturb.'" I didn't reply. Instead, I opened LinkedIn. Melissa, the product manager who once called my logistics framework inspiring and presented it as her own, had just posted an update. "Excited to be tackling big operational challenges this quarter. Love working with a team that embraces agile evolution." I scrolled past it, but I noticed the comments. 3 of them asked politely, "Are you referring to the recent outage? Would love your perspective on the delays." She didn't respond. At Vanguard, things were simple. The project I was spearheading, codenamed Keystone, was ahead of schedule. My team was small, sharp, and asked the right kind of questions. Nobody called me a rock star. Nobody needed me to prove I belonged. They just let me build. We deployed our first lightweight fulfillment prioritization test in week 2. It ran flawlessly, mostly because I didn't have to fight against bad decisions made in glass-walled offices. Meanwhile, Alderbridge kept unraveling. Jake's updates came every evening. Internal email leaked. Do we even know what modules Nathan controlled? Fleet's reporting 5 times backlog. Sales is screaming at ops. Brandon held a closed door with legal for 4 hours yesterday. Then finally, they offered a $20,000 bonus for anyone who could reverse engineer your Argus protocol. No takers yet. I asked him to stop sending updates, not because I didn't care, but because I already knew how it ended. On the second Friday post-firing, a black SUV pulled into my driveway just before noon. I was working from the upstairs office. My wife was in the kitchen. She looked out the window and said, "You expecting someone?" "No." I came downstairs slowly. By the time I opened the door, Brandon Kell was already halfway to the porch, suit jacket folded over his arm, sunglasses tucked into his collar. "Nathan," he said, his voice low, measured. "I'd like a minute, if that's all right." I stepped aside. He didn't wait for an invitation. In the living room, he glanced around like a man who used to count spaces like this, until something smaller and smarter unseated him. He didn't sit. "I want to apologize," he said. I didn't say anything. "I think it's obvious by now that we underestimated what you meant to the company, to our systems, to our clients." Still nothing. He continued. "We've tried to fix it. Patch what we could. Reverse engineer your structure. None of it's worked." I watched him shift uncomfortably. The man who once said, "No single person saved this ship. We all did it together. We're willing to bring you back. As a consultant, you named the rate. You'd report directly to me." I stared at him, then walked to the counter and poured myself a glass of water. He waited. After a moment, I said, "I'm already working elsewhere. We'll match it. Double it. It's not about the money." Brandon's face hardened slightly. "Then what's it about? Revenge?" I looked him in the eye for the first time. "It's about clarity." He blinked. "You made a business decision," I said. "I'm making mine." Silence. He looked like he might speak again, but then just nodded, jaw tight. He walked to the door, paused, then turned. "For what it's worth, I didn't want to do it. The board wanted you out. Too much old guard in leadership. They were prepping a lean acquisition. Your systems scared the hell out of the auditors." I nodded. He left. Later that day, I got a message from Vanguard's director of technology. "Just got off a call with Watkins and Drew. They're leaving Alderbridge permanently. Said they've never been more impressed by back-end resilience." Nicely done. Another domino. I went for a walk that evening, through the neighborhood, around the lake, past the business park where Alderbridge's shiny new office complex stood. It looked cold, sterile, lights still on in the top floors, some people still fighting to put out fires. I didn't pity them. You don't pity the house that burns itself down after ignoring the fire code. When I got home, my wife handed me a glass of wine. She didn't ask what happened. She didn't need to. We sat on the patio in silence as dusk settled. For the first time in years, I wasn't tired. The call came at 10:12 on a Tuesday morning. "Jake?" I hadn't heard from him in a week, not since Brandon walked off my porch with his pride folded up like his blazer. I picked up. "You need to hear this," he said. No greeting. "Okay. They planned your exit 6 months ago." I leaned back in my chair. Let that hang. Jake kept going. One of the finance interns copied a batch of Slack archives for a compliance check, old messages from Tanya, Brandon, and 2 board members, stuff they thought was off record. Turns out, the intern dumped everything into a legacy archive before quitting, forgot to delete it. And someone found it? Someone found it, and forwarded it to me. He sent a file a few minutes later. I opened it and started reading. One thread stood out. Tanya Reese, Slack DM. "If we want a clean acquisition package, Rourke has to go. His systems aren't verifiable. Too custom. Too tied to him. No buyer will touch that liability. Brandon Kell. He's too visible right now. Let him run out the crisis. Then cut him as part of structural realignment." Another one. "Board member. Redacted. Make sure his severance is low. He doesn't strike me as the litigious type." Tanya. "He'll nod and walk. That's what these workhorses do. Die quiet." I read that last line again. Die quiet. They didn't cut me because I was expensive, or burned out, or obsolete. They used me as a shield. Let me stop the bleeding, take the heat, rebuild the foundation, then quietly discarded me to make the books cleaner for sale. That's what the client exodus ruined, the acquisition. That was the real plan. I searched financial records under Alderbridge Holdings and its shell subsidiaries. Sure enough, a pending M&A registration had been filed 2 weeks before my termination. Buyer, Salder Equity Group, a private firm known for flipping supply chain tech firms, stripping them for parts. They'd done it before. I'd seen it happen to Fulcra Systems. Same pattern. Senior leaders out, systems rewritten, new hires to give it shine, sell the pieces, collect the returns. Except this time, they'd left a live wire in the system. Me. That afternoon, I had lunch with Daniel Pierce, Vanguard's legal advisor. He read the Slack logs twice, then looked up. "They knew you'd be terminated and intentionally minimized your severance. That's bad enough. But they also leveraged proprietary work you created without proper documentation and tried to repurpose it after removing me." He nodded. "You never sued?" "No interest." Daniel sipped his coffee. "Might be worth letting them know you've retained counsel anyway. Sometimes truth delivered quietly hits harder. I agreed. Not for money, not even for revenge, for memory. Because somewhere down the line they'd tell a different story. How the crisis was handled by a team, how systems failed due to legacy issues, how they'd done everything they could. But truth has a way of surviving even the prettiest revisions, and I kept receipts. That night, a junior reporter from Logitech Weekly reached out to me on LinkedIn, said she was writing a piece on post-crisis resilience, wanted to interview the architect behind the quietest collapse in recent logistics memory. I declined the interview, but I sent her a document. No names, just a timeline, events, emails, clauses, facts. She published a piece the following week titled, "Invisible Pillars, When the Ones Who Save the Company Are the First to Be Cut." The article didn't mention Alderbridge by name, but everyone in the industry knew. 2 days later, Tanya Reese removed her VP title from her profile. The day after that, Brandon Kell deactivated his account entirely. On Friday, a letter arrived by certified mail, heavy envelope, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of thick, cream paper. "Nathan, you deserved better. I should have said that then. I'll say it now. They used you. I followed. I shouldn't have. I was wrong. Brandon." I folded the letter and slid it into a drawer I never opened. Not out of forgiveness, just acknowledgement. The thing about apologies? They're most honest when they cost something. And by then, Brandon had paid enough to make it hurt. I walked into my office at Vanguard the next morning. My team had hit 97% process accuracy on the Keystone rollout. Clients were stable. Renewals rising. Everything quiet. I opened my notebook, the one I kept when Alderbridge started to fray. Wrote a single line across the top of a fresh page. They thought the system was broken because it depended on one man, but maybe it ran because one man never let it break. I put the pen down, and I got back to work. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Watkins and Drew officially terminated their contract with Alderbridge. The press release was polite, almost sterile. "We've chosen to partner with a new solutions provider to better support our evolving operational needs." But the effect wasn't. They were the last pillar holding Alderbridge's illusion of stability upright. Once they were gone, the cracks weren't theoretical anymore. They were visible from orbit. In the same week, 4 smaller logistics clients followed. A fleet of mid-tier vendors suspended automated ordering, citing ongoing reliability issues. And Tanya Reese quietly removed her name from Alderbridge's public leadership portal. I read it all from my home office, sipping black coffee while the wind rattled the window panes. My wife leaned in from the doorway. "Do you feel better?" she asked. "No," I said, "but I feel done." She nodded. We didn't say anything else. The offer from Vanguard came through formal HR channels that Friday. Chief Systems Architect, permanent, equity bump. First rights to build a new suite of back-end operations infrastructure for incoming federal contracts. Team of my choosing, relocation optional. I accepted within the hour. They asked if I wanted to make a public statement, something on LinkedIn maybe, or a brief feature in one of the industry trades. I declined. Let them keep wondering who kept the blood flowing while they decorated the corpse. A week later, a package arrived. No name on the shipping label. Inside, a box of folders, printed emails, and 1 USB drive. It came with a note. "You never asked for the truth, but we thought you should have it anyway." A friend still stuck there. I scanned the files that night. Internal audits, projections, redacted acquisition summaries. It was all there. The final picture. Turns out, Alderbridge had tried to mask the cost of my firing under a post-crisis normalization expense. They had falsified 3 months of process success metrics to satisfy the acquisition terms with Solder Equity. The deal had collapsed because they couldn't verify their own numbers. In the end, I didn't bring them down. Their lies did. I just didn't get in the way. I drove past Alderbridge's campus one last time before we moved. The windows were dark, half the parking lot empty. A for lease sign hung on the far fence. On the curb outside, a laminated motivational poster leaned against the trash bin. "Teamwork makes the dream work." I didn't stop. 6 months later, I stood in a glass-walled office 3 cities away. Same role, different view. I watched the junior engineer I'd mentored for 3 months deploy her first full-stack logistics module. She smiled, checked the logs, and gave me a quiet thumbs up. No fanfare, no credit grabbing, just function. That was enough. I opened my personal notebook one last time. The first page read, "If they screw me," I flipped to the back. Wrote one final line. They fired me on a Friday. Monday, I was irreplaceable. Then I closed the book and never opened it again. That's all for this story. I'll be back with another one. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. It motivates me to create more content like this.